Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny and this is Starseed Academy. So today I want to talk about the different dimensions. I think I'm actually going to do this as a series and devote one video to each dimension. So today we're going to talk about the third dimension and all of the different traits and experiences that you have when you're in the third dimension, how it's built, how we get here, the whole thing. And then in the next video, we'll do the fourth dimension, next video, fifth dimension, and so on. We'll see how far we go with this and how high up we want to go into the dimensions, but we definitely want to start with our base and our foundation of the third dimension where humanity is based. So the third dimension, what is it? So the third dimension is actually a simulation that you arrive into through an incarnation. I know, a lot of big words, right? But they don't need to be confusing. An incarnation just means a lifetime, a single lifetime of an eternal soul that has many lifetimes. So I am in this incarnation as Jenny on Earth. This is a physical incarnation. You can have non-physical incarnations where you are a light being, an angel, a different kind of guide for someone, and those would still be incarnations, because you're living as that being and playing that role and not as just the bare soul that you are. Does that make sense? Okay, so you arrive into the third dimension through this incarnation. And the incarnation is decided upon with soul contracts. So before you come to Earth and you come into this 3D simulation, which we'll discuss in a little bit, you create soul contracts with your soul and other souls that will be involved, like your soul family. It's a group of souls that are going to be in your life as these people. And you decide what lessons you want to learn as a soul, what you're lacking or what you want more of, the growth that you want to experience, the main hurdles and challenges, big things like car accidents, sometimes little things like losing a job. Like a lot of it is actually like chosen through these contracts for you to experience. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't free will. There is definitely still free will, and you can choose. Most things in your life are up to you and your choice, but there are quite a few things that are built into the contracts, and people tend to call that fate. So it's not going against your free will because you did choose it. You just chose it as the soul before you got here, but it was still a free will choice. And then the other souls that are involved, that are in these contracts with you, would be souls like your family, like your mom and your dad and your siblings, any like main relationships that you're going to have, long-term romantic relationships, especially a spouse if you get married, your children, friends, best friends, like anybody that's close or even has just had an impact in your life. Like if you had a really amazing teacher, if you had a really terrible boss, like there were all things that you were teaching one another. Soul contracts go both ways. It's not just you receiving all of these beautiful lessons and growth. You are giving the lessons and the growth as well through the experiences. So it's like souls going into a simulation to role play out these experiences together, to learn all about what it would feel like to be a human going through those experiences and those lessons. And you learn a lot about yourself as well, because you can say, oh, I know that if this came up, I would choose this path. But would you? If you didn't remember and you went through the veil of forgetting, which we'll also talk about in a second. I know there's a lot to the third dimension, but when you come into the third dimension and you forget all that soul nonsense and you don't remember soul contracts or whatever, you think this is just life, would you actually make that choice you thought you would make? You don't know, because if it's all erased and you're just going from like gut instinct and your truth, like your first response, like your first choice that your soul would make, maybe you don't know exactly what you would choose. And we don't, because there are many times that we go back from an incarnation and we're like blown away, either good or bad, for either being like so proud of everything that we got through and accomplished and learned, or maybe feeling a little bit regretful that we didn't, accomplish as much as we had. But any growth is so valuable. So really, as long as you're growing in any way, it's a valuable experience and it's worth doing. So the soul enters into the life, into the simulation that the third dimension is built upon through being born. So once the soul is born, then they're in that physical body and they grow with that body as it grows and it becomes their identity. Now, the veil of forgetfulness that we brought up before, it's not instantaneous. I think a lot of people think you're born and you forget everything, like this curtain that falls. That's not the case. No. The veil of forgetfulness is a part of the third dimension reality, like the simulation, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. It's a part of that. So when you're born into it, it slowly starts to affect you and absorb in until you do forget all of the before experiences. This is why kids and babies see non-physical beings. We know that they do. How many shows, movies, experiences, stories have you heard about a kid or a baby seeing something that no one else can see? They see the non-physical beings because they haven't completely absorbed the programming of the third dimension into their bodies yet. And they're still very high vibrational. They just came from source, right? They just came in and they haven't really been affected or dumbed down in a sense, vibrationally speaking. So they still are able to remember. They can't tell you because they're babies, but remember where they came from at the beginning, and they see between like the cracks in the worlds, they see all the non-physical beings around them. And this can be their angels and their guides and whatever is around them at that time. Interestingly, I believe, you can tell me if you think differently, or maybe not everyone believes this, but I believe that animals also see non-physical beings. So they're also able to see like the spirit world. More proof that the veil of forgetfulness is not instantaneous is that kids remember their past lives. So very young, but even up to like 10 years old, they're still having these past lives coming through. They slowly do start to fade over time, so they would get less and less intense. But when they're like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's intense. They have those past life memories coming through. They see them in their dreams. They remember them. They remember what it felt like to be that other person. Sometimes they don't even really feel completely at home in their own body yet. Have you experienced anything like that? I know I definitely have. In grade 1, I've told this story before, so you've probably heard it. But in grade 1, I had a huge past life come through where I had the same dream every single night for an entire summer. So 3 months basically of this same dream every single night, where I was this soldier. I was a boy, a young teenage boy soldier. And that was very painful for me, very confusing. I didn't have anyone in my life at the time who would have known what that was or what was going on. I certainly didn't know. I just knew that I was him, that it was me, and then I would go to sleep and become this other person and be trapped in that dream. Like one of those dreams that was so lucid, so real, so like present and physical. I would look down, see the uniform, see like I was him in the dream, and then I couldn't wake up. Like even though I was lucid and awake in the dream and realizing what was happening, I couldn't wake myself up. So it was a terrible feeling of being trapped in a very traumatic life experience that this soldier went through. And then I would wake up and be this little girl again. Like I was in grade 1, so what would I have been, like 6 maybe? But still have all the feelings of this other guy, this boy, and the memories of what he went through and his friends, and the sadness and the trauma and the angst. It was awful. It was so confusing. And it also took a really long time for me in this lifetime, as the little girl still, to accept that I was a girl in this life, because in the one before that I was clearly this boy. And so it was just like wildly confusing for a long time, and something that impacted me so greatly still did fade over time, because the veil of forgetfulness gets us all in the end. Another thing about kids before they get too old is that they remember how to fly. Do you ever remember flying as a kid? Now, I think this is probably astral travel, and we were doing it while we were asleep, but it sure felt like you were able to just fly. Like, I remember thinking like I had this secret hidden ability that nobody believed me, but every night I would go and fly. I remember it being very clear it was definitely astral travel, because I flew to my school, and I remember like flying in the girls' bathroom over top of the stalls. Like, it was so detailed. I was absolutely there doing it. And again, that's like really fun and exciting, and you think you have these superpowers, but it's more proof that that veil of forgetfulness that takes away your memories of how to experience and do all of these beautiful gifts, like your psychic gifts and your ability to astral travel, all of those things you do eventually forget. We obviously found them again later. Well, this community did, this spiritual community. But there is that time where you do forget, right? And you become just like all of the other autopilot humans. So why would a soul choose to come into an incarnation on Earth and come to the third dimension? Generally speaking, it would be for balancing karma. So perhaps you had something happen to you in a past lifetime and you want to balance that out, or vice versa. You did something in a past lifetime that now needs balancing, because when something is off kilter in your soul, it's going to weigh on you. You want to balance out the energy, so that way you always understand the light and the shadow, and you can be in the center at peace. We also come to the third dimension to experience these soul lessons and soul growth. So very similar to the karmic balancing, where we're trying to now expand upon our energy. And the reason that we have to come and have these experiences to grow and to understand more is because knowledge alone is never enough. Like, you could just sit up in these higher dimensions and, be taught all of these things, but if you don't actually experience it, it's like someone describing the color red to you versus seeing it. Like, it's completely different to be in it. So we can hear about it and understand it and have this knowledge, but without adding on the experience, it won't become wisdom. Because the equation is knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. So we've come for the wisdom. Another reason that we might have come is an earth mission. A lot of us souls, especially starseed souls, have these earth missions where they volunteered to come. And that doesn't mean that they don't also get to experience soul growth, soul lessons, karmic balancing, but they have this added volunteer quality to their lives where they've decided to come to help. On a broad spectrum, it's to raise your vibration, which in turn raises the vibration of the energy around you. So we're here to raise the vibration of the collective consciousness, which is all of the consciousness on the earth as a collective. If you gathered up all the consciousness and put it in this group, what would the average be? So the collective consciousness is the average of where everyone's at. So the more people that awaken and raise their vibration, the collective consciousness also does this tip. So we're here to raise our own vibrations and send that energy out to raise the vibrations of the next and the next and the next, a ripple effect, affect as many people as we can to ultimately raise the vibration of the collective consciousness, right? So this is what then takes us into those higher dimensions, and then we leave the third dimension. And so this is a huge mission for starseeds, and also a reason why we are so spread out around the globe. So we are spread out so that we can affect as many people and as much of the collective consciousness as possible. If you put us all in Peru, here we are all together happy and having a party, and that place would be so high vibing, but then the rest of the world would be lacking. So unfortunately for us, because I say unfortunately because it leads to starseed loneliness, we're very spread out. So unless it's like a really dense area and there was a few people needed, most of us are really like far apart from one another. Particularly like the people like me who live in rural communities, country communities. I don't live in a city anymore. I used to. And so I live in the country. So like one of me is probably good for like this huge giant area because there's not that many people, right? So then the next starseed, well, I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know where the next one closest to me would be. And so that's why these online communities like Starseed Academy are so precious, where we can talk and get together like this and share our ideas and our knowledge, because everyone has a piece of the puzzle. So there's also a planetary grid that comes into place with the third dimension. So it's a grid of energy around the planet, and it essentially like reflects or mirrors the collective consciousness energy that we were talking about. So if something happens in the planetary grid energy, that seeps into the collective consciousness and affects it as well, and vice versa. If the collective consciousness has a huge dip, and maybe due to a war, right? Or something really traumatic or scary or fearful, those are all low vibrational energies and would cause a huge dip. If it's a worldwide event, like think about 2020. So these huge dips because of these worldwide events that create fear and a lot of like us versus them mentality, where you pit people against each other. A lot of the stuff that's been going on in 2020 is the perfect example of the third dimension. So they both reflect one another. The collective consciousness can affect the planetary grid. The planetary grid can affect the collective consciousness. They charge each other, they mirror one another, and it's basically just like Gaia's energy, her grid, and then the collective consciousness grid within that. And then deep within the earth, we also have the Schumann Resonance. The Schumann Resonance is a vibrational scale, much like Earth's heartbeat. Actually, that's exactly how I think of it. You'll see it on the scale. It's like a little heartbeat, and it's Gaia's heartbeat. And so as she slumbers, not much action, but when she has these high spikes of being awake, because she is a sentient being, she is her own person. She is affected also just by things, just the way that we are as humans, like solar flares, full moons. All of that affects Gaia as well. She's this beautiful mother spirit, and she has her own energy. And when she has a high spike, that affects us, which affects the planetary grid, which affects the galaxy, which affects the universe. It's all connected in these steps. So a soul that has completely absorbed in that veil of forgetfulness and has not had a spiritual awakening yet is living much on like an autopilot mindset. They're living just this very physical life. This very like, you get what you see, everything is really simple and logical, and they're just like humming along in their life kind of like a character. And in those souls and in the third dimension, there is this built-in programming. Okay, so just like the veil of forgetfulness is something built into the system that slowly seeps in, there are other programs, not just the forgetfulness. An example, there are many, but I'll try to think of some examples that make it really obvious for you that you could see. So the one that pops into my mind first is 9 to 5 programming. So the program that you have to get a job and work like a minimum of these 8 hours a day and work like 5 days a week. And that is expected of you, and that's what you expect of yourself, and you don't question it, and you live your entire life with this program instilled, and you just obey. You just be good and you just obey, and you don't ask questions. So that's a huge program built into the system to keep people under like control, so that they're so busy working and that they don't have time or interest really in looking for more work, like raising their vibration, like, oh my God, I'm already working so much. So this 9 to 5 programming is built in to the third dimensional system or simulation that we're in to keep the masses kind of under control and organized. Another third dimensional program, 3D programming, is that whole us versus them. So the truth is not us versus them at all. And we know that. The truth is we are all one, we are all connected, and we all come from source. We are all brothers and sisters of each other. And what one person does affects the others, just as we were talking about with the Schumann Resonance affecting the collective consciousness, which is each person, affecting the planetary grid, affecting everything affects everything. It is so connected. It is like this spider web. It's unbelievable how your actions affect all, not just people, but everything, like the whole universe. But this programming doesn't want us to think as such an individual. They want us to think that it's us versus them. So that way it's all about competition. It's all about, women versus men, or black versus white, or women versus women with this competition, or men versus men with this competition, because there must not be enough for everybody. So we all have to compete for the little amount that there is. So there's a lot of these programmings that keep our minds busy, keep us from uniting as one. And these programs show up as beliefs, belief systems, belief structures that are accepted by the majority. So like the 9-to-5 programming, that's accepted by like everyone. Nobody would ever think that a source of abundance would not come from a job. Of course it has to be from a job, from something outside of yourself. It couldn't possibly come from within you, right? And again, we know better now, but we didn't then when we were still working under these programs. Another huge program of the third dimension is religion. So hopefully that doesn't trigger too many people, but it's a huge program because it's very us versus them, good versus evil, and heaven and hell. It's all about polarity and duality. There's no oneness, there's no wholeness. It's about rules, lots of rules written by a bunch of old men for everybody to follow, especially women. And there's not true equality, no matter how they preach it. Each religion that I've studied, there's always something that's not quite aligned with real equality, real wholeness. And then schools are a really big program. That's where you really, brainwash the kids before they're adults into believing all of these main programs and really put them against each other in a competitive way and really teach them all about how you have to get a job, prepare for a job. It's all about the job. And yeah, it's just like all this programming. So this programming keeps the third dimension in a dense state, keeping it in a dense vibration. Dense being lower vibration, right? So the denser a vibration, the more physical something is, the heavier it is. So for instance, a physical body is a dense vibration. And if you had a high vibe and you went into an incarnation or a lifetime, your body wouldn't be as solid or as physical. In fact, you could have a light body in the really high dimensions, angelic dimensions. And then you can have in between, right? Like maybe you're not in like the 11th and 12th dimensions where the angels reside, but maybe you're not in the third dimension. Maybe you have a lifetime around seventh dimension, let's say. And it would be, maybe somewhat of a physical body, but it wouldn't be as heavy and it didn't need to eat. And there would be all these differences. But here on Earth, it's like super dense, like super heavy. The emotions are heavy. The energies are dense. It's like low vibrational energies of competition, fear, judgment, shame, loneliness, hatred, stress, anxiety, worry. 2020. So by keeping this third dimension and all of its inhabitants and beings in this dense vibration, then there's not a lot of room for these higher perspectives. Like we were talking about, where everybody is connected, everybody is one, and having these aha moment realizations. When we have those beautiful experiences, especially something profound like a Kundalini awakening, where you whoa, you have this huge realization about the oneness and the wholeness of it all and how we truly are all the same. Those kinds of things will blow your mind and change you completely, but they're also you breaking through the system, like poking your head up, coming up for air and looking around and being like, whoa, hold on a sec. Like, why did I even believe that limiting belief? And this is a continual journey to shed yourself of this programming, like unplug the 9-to-5 program. First off, just get that out of your system so that you can be free, because we were born to be free and abundant. So that should be the first one. And then also, no, maybe the first one should be the us versus them. Like there are so many things to unplug from your system, ditch those beliefs and rewrite over it beliefs based on love, unity, and oneness and abundance. That's what we're doing. We're breaking through the third dimensional system by raising our vibrations and helping others to do the same. But I think that's enough today on the third dimension. That was a lot of information. And if you have questions, definitely pop those into the comments section. If you have comments, put them in there too. And then like the video, of course, share it, because it's so important for people to understand where they're at and what they're existing in. It's where we all exist right now and how they can help themselves, right? And then subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to do the fourth dimension in my next video, and I'm going to hit the fifth dimension too coming up shortly after that. So I'll be answering any questions that you have. And remember that new videos come out every Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. So I hope to see you there. And the most important thing that you can do is listen to your heart and the quiet voice within. Because you are so much more than the body you're in. Have a great day. Bye.